For what? Galahad asked.
What do you think, Lord Prince? He's lacking for throwboard players.
Keloch grinned.
These bastards may not have the belly for a fight.
He gestured towards the fort that was thronged with Tudric's neatly uniformed men.
But we have. I suspect we're going to attack all on our own.
He saw our surprise and laughed.
You heard Lord Agricola the other night. 200 men can hold Lugvale against an army. Well, we've got 200 spearmen, and Gorfethid possesses an army. So why do we need anyone from Gwent? Time to feed the ravens!
The first rain fell, hissing in the smithy fires, and it seemed we were going to war.
I sometimes think that was Arthur's bravest decision. God knows he took other decisions in circumstances just as desperate. But never was Arthur weaker than on that rainy night in Magnus, where Tudric was drawing up patient orders that would withdraw his forward men back to the Roman walls in preparation for a truce between Gwent and the enemy. Arthur gathered 5 of us in a soldier's house close to those walls. The rain seethed on the roof, while under the thatch a log fire smoked to light us with a lurid glare. Sagramor, Arthur's most trusted commander, sat beside Morfans on the hut's small bench. Keloch, Galahad and I squatted on the floor, while Arthur talked. Prince Murig, Arthur allowed, had spoken an uncomfortable truth, for the war was indeed of his own making. If he had not spurned Cynwyn, there would be no enmity between Powys and Dumnonia. Gwent was involved by being Powys's most ancient enemy, and Dumnonia's traditional friend. But it was not in Gwent's interest to continue the war. If I had not come to Britain, Arthur said, then King Tudric would not be foreseeing the rape of his land. This is my war, and just as I began it, so I must end it.
He paused. He was a man to whom emotion came easily, and he was at that moment overcome with feeling.
I am going to Lugvale tomorrow, he finally spoke, and for a dreadful second I thought he meant to give himself up to Gorfethid's awful revenge. But then Arthur offered us his open, generous smile. And I would like it if you came with me, but I have no right to demand it.
There was silence in the room. I suppose we were all thinking that the fight in the Vale had seemed a risky prospect when the combined armies of Gwent and Dumnonia were to be employed. But how were we to win with only Dumnonia's men?
You have a right to demand that we come,
Keloch broke the silence,
for we took oaths to serve you.
I release you from those oaths, Arthur said,
asking only that if you live, you stand by my promise to see Mordred grow into our king.
There was silence again. None of us, I think, wavered in our loyalty, but nor did we know how to express it until Galahad spoke. I swore you no oath, he said to Arthur, but I do now. Where you fight, Lord, I fight. And he who is your enemy is mine, and he who is your friend is my friend also. I swear that on the precious blood of the living Christ. He leaned forward, took Arthur's hand and kissed it. May my life be forfeit if I break my word.
It takes 2 to make an oath, Keloch said. You might release me, Lord, but I don't release myself.
Nor I, Lord, I added. Sagramor looked bored.
I'm your man, he said to Arthur. No one else's. Bugger the oath, Ugly Morfan said. I want to fight.
Arthur had tears in his eyes. For a time he could not speak, so instead he busied himself ramming at the fire with a log until he had succeeded in halving its warmth and doubling its smoke.
Your men are not oath-bound, he said thickly, and I want none but willing men in Lugvale tomorrow. Why tomorrow? Keloch asked. Why not the day after? The more time we have to prepare, the better, surely.
Arthur shook his head.
We'll be no better prepared if we wait a whole year. Besides, Gorfethid's spies will already be going north with news that Tudric is accepting Gorfethid's terms. So we must attack before those same spies discover that we Dumnonians have not retreated.
We attack at dawn tomorrow." He looked at me. "You will attack first, Lord Derval. So tonight you must reach your men and talk to them, and if they prove unwilling, then so be it. But if they are willing, then Morfans can tell you what they must do." Morfans had ridden the whole enemy line, flaunting himself in Arthur's armour, but also reconnoitring the enemy positions. Now he took handfuls of grain from a pot and piled them on his outspread cloak to make a rough model of Lug Vale. "It's not a long valley," he said, "but the sides are steep. The barricade is here, at the southern end." He pointed to a spot just inside the modelled valley. "They felled trees and made a fence. It's big enough to stop a horse, but it won't take long for a few men to haul those trees aside. Their weakness is here." He indicated the western hill. "It's steep at the northern end of the valley, but where they built their barricades you can easily run down that slope. Climb the hill in the dark, and in the dawn you attack downhill and dismantle their tree fence while they're still waking up. Then the horses can come through." He grinned, relishing the thought of surprising the enemy. "Your men are used to marching by night," Arthur told me. "So at dawn tomorrow you take the barricade, destroy it, then hold the Vale long enough for our horse to arrive. After the horse, our spearmen will come. Sagramore will command the spearmen in the Vale, while I and 50 horsemen attack Branaginium." Sagramore showed no reaction to the announcement, which gave him command of most of Arthur's army. The rest of us could not hide our astonishment, not at Sagramore's appointment, but at Arthur's tactics. 50 horsemen attacking Gorfithid's whole army? Galahad asked dubiously. "We won't capture Branaginium," Arthur admitted. "We may not even get close, but we shall stir them into a pursuit, and that pursuit will bring them down to the Vale. Sagramore will meet that pursuit at the Vale's northern end, where the road fords the river, and when they attack, you retreat." He looked at us in turn, making sure we understood his instructions. "Retreat," he said again. "Always retreat. Let them think they win. And when you have sucked them deep into the valley, I shall attack." "From where?" I asked. "From behind, of course." Arthur, energized by the prospect of battle, had regained all his enthusiasm. "When my horsemen retreat from Branaginium, we won't go back into the Vale, but hide outside its northern end. The place is smothered in trees, and once you suck the enemy in, we'll come from their rear." Sagramore stared at the piles of grain. "The Black-Shield Irish at Coleshill," he said in his execrable accent, "could march south of the hills to take us in the rear." He pushed a finger through the scattered grains at the Vale's southern end to show what he meant. Those Irish, we all knew, were the fearsome warriors of Oengus mac Eirim, king of Demetia, who had been our ally until Gorfithid had changed his loyalty with gold. "You want us to hold an army in front, and the Black Shields behind?" Sagramore asked. "You see," Arthur said with a smile, "why I offer to release you from your oaths. But once Tudric knows we're embattled, he'll come. As the day passes, Sagramore, you will find your shield line thickening by the minute. Tudric's men will deal with the enemy from Coleshill." "And if they don't?" Sagramore asked. "Then we will probably lose," Arthur admitted calmly. "But with my death will come Gorfithid's victory and Tudric's peace. My head will go to Kynwyn as a present for her wedding, and you, my friends, will be feasting in the other world, where I trust you will keep a place at table for me." There was silence again. Arthur seemed sure that Tudric would fight, though none of us could be so certain. It seemed to me that Tudric might well prefer to let Arthur and his men perish in Lug Vale, and thus rid himself of an inconvenient alliance. But I also told myself that such high politics were not my concern. My concern was surviving the next day. And as I looked at Morfan's crude model of the battlefield, I worried about the western hill, down which we would attack in the dawn. If we could attack there, I thought, so could the enemy. "They'll outflank our shield line," I said, describing my concern. Arthur shook his head. and the hill's too steep for a man in armour to climb at the Vale's northern end. The worst they'll do is send their levies there, which means archers. If you can spare men, Derval, put a handful there, but otherwise pray that Tudric comes quickly. To which end, he said, turning to Galahad, though it hurts me to ask you to stay away from the shield wall, Lord Prince, you will be of most value to me tomorrow if you ride as my envoy to King Tudric. You are a prince. You speak with authority, and you, above all men, can persuade him to take advantage of the victory I intend to give him by my disobedience. Galahad looked troubled. I would rather fight, Lord. On balance, Arthur smiled, I would rather win than lose. For that I need Tudric's men to come before the day's end, and you, Lord Prince, are the only fit messenger I can send to an aggrieved king. You must persuade him, flatter him, plead with him, but above all, Lord Prince, convince him that we win the war tomorrow, or else fight for the rest of our days. Galahad accepted the choice. Though I have your permission to return and fight at Derval's side when the message is delivered, he added. You will be welcome, Arthur said. He paused, staring down at the piles of grain. We are few, he said simply, and they are a host. But dreams do not come true by using caution, only by braving danger. Tomorrow, we can bring peace to the Britons. He stopped abruptly, struck perhaps by the thought that his ambition of peace was also Tudric's dream. Maybe Arthur was wondering whether he should fight at all. I remembered how, after our meeting with Aiel, when we made the oath under the oak, Arthur had contemplated giving up the fight, and I half expected him to bare his soul again. But on that rainy night, the horse of ambition was tugging his soul hard, and he could not contemplate a peace in which his own life or exile was the price. He wanted peace, but even more, he wanted to dictate that peace. Whatever gods you pray to, he said quietly, go with you all tomorrow. I had to ride a horse to get back to my men. I was in a hurry and fell off 3 times. As omens, the falls were dire, but the road was soft with mud and nothing was hurt but my pride. Arthur rode with me, but checked my horse when we were still a spear's throw from where my men's campfires flickered low in the insistent rain. Do this for me tomorrow, Derval, he said, and you may carry your own banner and paint your own shields. In this world or the next, I thought. But I did not speak the thought aloud for fear of tempting the gods. Because tomorrow, in a grey, bleak dawn, we would fight against the world. Not one of my men tried to evade their oaths. A few, might have wanted to avoid battle, but none wanted to show weakness in front of their comrades. And so we all marched, leaving in the night's middle to make our way across a rain-soaked countryside. Arthur saw us off, then went to where his horsemen were encamped. Nimue insisted on accompanying us. She had promised us a spell of concealment, and, after that, nothing would persuade my men to leave her behind. She worked the spell before we left, performing it on the skull of a sheep she found by flamelight in a ditch close to our camp. She dragged the carcass out of the thicket where a wolf had feasted, chopped the head away, stripped away the remnants of maggoty skin, then crouched with her cloak, hiding both her and the stinking skull. She crouched there a long time, breathing the ghastly stench of the decomposing head, then stood and kicked the skull scornfully aside. She watched where it came to rest, and, after a moment's deliberation, declared that the enemy would look aside as we marched through the night. Arthur, who was fascinated by Nimue's intensity, shuddered when she made the pronouncement, then embraced me. I owe you a debt, Derval. You owe me nothing, Lord. If for nothing else, he said, I thank you for bringing me Kynwyn's message.